Let's imagine a world in which men and the environment are prospering and is going to be prospering for the next generations. This could actually become a reality. But if we wish our planet to be sustainable, we need to go through a transitional lifestyle and be more sustainable in terms of energy. Energy and solutions we're using for our houses, buildings, and industries may make a lot of difference. It could make a lot of difference. And that's the reason why our objective is to provide electrical solutions, making it possible to set up a sustainable world. We're providing products and services, improving comfort, safety, and energy performance inside facilities, infrastructures, and buildings. We're putting forward a whole series of possibilities to fulfill needs, as well as technologies helping our clients to make most environmentally friendly solutions. And we're trying to make people's lives more efficient, sustainable, and easier. Within all of our business activities, a worldwide team is engaged and is putting its best foot forward to create a better world. Welcome to Rexel, a world of energy. Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, welcome. My name is Agnès Touraine. I'm very happy to have you here as the head of Rexel's Board of Directors. And we're now having a mixed general meeting for shareholders with Guillaume Texier, General Manager, Laurent Delabarre, Financial Head of the Group, Isabelle Hopfner-Léger, General Secretary and Secretary of the Board of Directors. I now declare the session to be open. First of all, we need to set up the Bureau. As head of the Board of Directors, I'm heading the Assembly of the two shareholders, in other words, the Rexel Actionnariat Classique France, represented by Madame Isabelle Plan, and the fund Rexel Actionnariat Classique International, represented by Mr. Peter Amann. Present and consenting parties are appointed as Secretary. Isabelle Hopfner-Léger will now play the role of Secretary. The KPMG SA and PricewaterhouseCoopers auditors of the company are present. The attendance sheet shows us that we reached a quorum of 1/5 of the shares for the ordinary part and a quarter of the shares for the extraordinary part. The shareholders here present, represented, or having voted are now owning 247,370,000 shares. In other words, 84.48% of all the shares representing voting rights. Declare this regularly constituted assembly to be set up, and all of the documents stipulated by the law are available at the Bureau. Those documents are made available to shareholders at the headquarters, and were registered online on Rexel's website within due time. To make our lives easier, we are not going to read out all the following reports. The management report of the Board of Directors on the company's business activities and the annual accounts, consolidated accounts for the year 2025, including the corporate governance report and the sustainable report. The Board of Directors report on free shares attributed. No, those are the free shares. The Board of Directors report, including detailed explanations on the draft resolutions. The auditors will be able to express themselves on their reports, and of course we will be available to entertain any questions. Let me just remind you that the general meeting was convened so as to deliberate on the agenda, pages 50 to 51 in the invitation brochure. Finally, the company got no written questions or no draft resolutions to be included in the agenda from the shareholders. I will now kick it over to Guillaume Texier, General Manager. Guillaume. Thank you, ma'am. Hello, everybody. I would like to start off and get back to the highlights highlighting events. I'm going to talk about the highlights in the year 25, and by talking about the objectives which we reached and outperformed. First of all, our growth in 2025 at constant pace is plus 2.5% below the initial objective, which had been registered in October. Then the EBITDA, the adjusted EBITDA margin is 6.0%, which is quite in line with our objectives, illustrated once again the resilience of our margins in a difficult environment. Finally, cash generation was quite robust, and our conversion rates of free cash flow before interest and tax, 76%, way above our 65% objective. Let's now distance ourselves from this and get back to the 2025 context. We could actually label the environment as somewhat sluggish Europe, especially in the residential area, and North America, penalized by the tariff-related uncertainties in the Pacific region, is now in the back. The growth drivers were the data center markets, driven by AI, as well as the favorable price dynamic in the United States, supported by tariffs. In this uncertain environment, we outperformed and gained market shares on our main segments, garnering the very specific results stemming from efforts made in terms of commercial excellence, digital penetration, and acceleration of high added value services. We also strengthened our presence in data centers and in infrastructures in the United States, capitalizing on our investments and our acquisition of Tele. Finally, we remained agile in terms of portfolio management with 4 acquisitions and 2 divestments. From a geographical standpoint, the performance of the year was driven by our 2 main geographical pillars, North America and Europe, with issues different from one continent to the other. In North America, our priority was to conciliate growth and profitability. We were able to seize high growth segment opportunities and still be able to manage tariff impacts and maintain strict control over our costs, as reflected by the stability of our headcount. In Europe, the situation was different. In a sluggish environment with lower volumes and stable prices, we acted on cost by deploying adaptation plans, which led to the reduction of headcounts amount up to 4% reductions. And this agility contributed to better margin resilience versus the last trough. I would like to get back to the active portfolio management, a key driver in our value creation strategy. 2025 was once again an active year with 4 acquisitions and 2 divestments. We strengthened our presence in the United States thanks to the acquisition of our Warsaw and Schwing. We also strengthened our positions in adjacent activities with Jacma operations in Canada and Technobi in Italy. These operations supplemented our situations stemming from the previous year. Since 2021, we're quite about 2.8 billion euros in terms of turnover, or 2 billion without divestments, with 21 acquisitions over the period, about 60% regarding our key businesses, electrical distributions, and 40% with adjacent activities, where we're able to identify a structural growth potential and high added value opportunities. We also were quite active in North America with 14 acquisitions, representing over 70% of acquired sales. Finally, this external growth strategy shows that it's a value-added strategy. The aggregate multiple is 7 times, and the post-synergy EBITDA lower than the Rexel valuing multiple. Those actions reinforce the sturdiness of our portfolio and provide enough flexibility so that we can keep investing in growth. Last point, which I'd like to make on those news, we today have a renewed executive committee in line with our organization and the group's strategic priorities. Here, I have Odile Moll as head of strategy and transformation, and Antoine Guiraud's appointment as the head of procurement allows us to aim for 2 drivers in our strategy, the transformation and performance of our value chain. The executive committee has now 9 members. This governance is tightened with all the various functions allowing to carry out our strategy, accelerate our decision-making process, and reinforce collective priorities around operational excellence, digitalization, and value creation. The executive committee is fully engaged to steer the next Rexel development phase in a demanding environment and in a rapid evolution. I'd like to kick it over to Laurent Delabarre, who's going to give you further details on our 2025 performance. Thank you, Guillaume. Hello, everybody. I'd like to get back to the nice performance of Rexel in 2025 in the uncertain environment, which was described in the first part. Let's get started with the sales analysis. We generated a 19.4 billion euro 2025 revenue, 0.7% growth. In published data, the organic performance was the main driver, with sales growth at a constant day rate plus 2.5%, including 1.2% with volume effects and 0.6% of price effects. The external growth operations were also able to contributed to plus 1.8% and outperformed the divestment impact. Those positive elements were partially impacted by external factors. The exchange impact had a negative impact of minus 2.2%, mainly related to low American US dollar and Canadian dollar versus the euro, and the calendar effect was slightly negative. Let's now have a look at the evolution of the group's profitability, so as to better understand the factors allowing us to reach an adjusted EBITDA of 6% in 2025 versus 5.9% published in 2024. In a nutshell, our record productivity more than offset the negative impact of what we call the inflation deviation. In 2025, inflation of our costs was more important than the increased prices, with a negative impact labeled as an inflation delta, minus 19 base points. And globally speaking, the impact of delta inflation and operational lever were more than offset by the positive contribution of our portfolio management operations and our action plans, so that we could actually reach a 2.8% record productivity. Let's now talk about the other items pertaining to our P&L accounts. Other expenses and revenues, 56 million euros, 41 million euros of restructuring, mostly in Europe and most especially in the UK and in Germany. Furthermore, the financial expenses amounted to 214 million euros, slightly above last year's, and the increased gross debt offsetting the cost of debt, 4.4% versus 4.4% last year. Our tax rate is at 30.2% because of the extraordinary tax in France. And this, hence, 679 million euro recurrent revenue versus 662 million euros in 2024. Finally, our dividend proposal for the year 2025. Rexel is now proposing the maintenance of dividend at 1.2 euros per share for the 4th consecutive year. This represents a distribution rate of 32% of the net recurrent revenue. That's in the above portion of our distribution policy. Hence, our confidence on our model's resilience and our great ability to generate cash. This distribution is subject to your approval and is part of the resolutions which are going to be voted in very soon. The payment should be carried out on the 13th of May, 2026. So let me kick it over to Guillaume for the presentation of the sales in the first quarter 2026 and annual forecast. Thank you, Laurent. I'd like to share with you the sales of the first quarter, which we published this morning, as well as the 2026 forecast. Now, globally speaking, the beginning of the year is quite sturdy, with a progression of 3.4% at the constant day in the constant day context. Our three geographies are in a positive proportion, and we benefited in the first quarter. We benefited from the higher price increases, higher than expected, and offset the volume weaknesses related to the bad weather conditions in North America and Europe, and because of our selection strategy in some countries and so forth, the geography. The progression of the first quarter was mostly driven by North America, Asia Pacific, whereas Europe is now making gradual headway. We're now getting back to the improvements, believers, in those three geographical zones. Europe is now in a positive area, thanks to the contribution of higher sales prices and the good positions of residential segments in the industry. Furthermore, in the Middle East crisis, we also are observing a better situation so far as electrification solutions. The government France was quite ambitious with a 10 billion euro per annum for electrification solutions in Belgium. We also observed a great growth in terms of solar solutions in the first quarter, with the acceleration in the month of March. Now, let's talk about North America. The dynamic is quite strong, mostly driven by data centers with recent investments and our ability to store. Furthermore, our digital sales in the United States and Canada are also going up and represent about 30% of our businesses in the region, thanks to the adoption of new digital tools. Some of them are based on AI. Finally, two-digit growth of our order log in this region provides us with a greater visibility in the forthcoming months. In Asia Pacific, we registered a greater growth thanks to battery and solar activities, and thanks to industrial automated solutions in China. Let me now also mention the last acquisition, which we finalized Monday, Techno Contact 360 in Canada. This acquisition will allow us to strengthen our offer in electrical distribution, industrial automated solutions, and data centers and services. Techno Contact is specialized in project management with a good control over design processes down to long-term services. The company generated a turnover of 85 million Canadian dollars last year and has greater growth, greater exposure, to data centers. Techno Contact will become the central component of a new industrial service platform which we're creating in Canada, in addition to companies like Ejecmark and Apex, which we recently integrated. I'd like to conclude this part by reminding you of our 2026 objectives, which we confirmed this morning. Just as a reminder, we're 3 to 5% constant day growth in current adjusted EBITDA margin of 6.2% and a free cash flow conversion surpassing the 65% bar. Let me just talk about the strategic trajectory of Rexel and tell you how, or to what extent, this will make it possible to tackle the future with confidence. Now, as was already mentioned, and let me get started with this, we reached our objectives in 2025, and we hence consolidated our position on the professional distribution market for electrical equipment. Rexel is number 2 worldwide. Our performances display reality. Rexel is more robust, agile company and better positioned for sustainable value creation. Now, this was not done overnight. This is the fruit of work engaged by a Rexel team and has been so for quite a number of years. We progressively improved our model and adapted it to the transformation of our environments and markets and our client expectations. We reinforced our fundamentals. We focused on value creation and more recently reactivated new growth drivers. And those evolutions reinforced our value proposal and our ability to carry out long-term improvements. Since 2021, we've also reinforced our performance profile. We improved our profitability quite significantly and reached levels that are going to be surpassing those of the past in a sustainable way. We also were able to maintain sturdy growth, including in more sluggish markets. And this discipline is recognized by markets that value our ability to create value. Now, what we also built up changed Rexel from top to bottom. Our confidence is based on three major elements. Structural market dynamics, ability to capture growth, and a clear strategy to accelerate potential. And let me get back to all 3 of these points. First of all, we are using or harnessing deep and sustainable market dynamics. Movements are going to be really accelerating. Electrification is an example. You got energy transition on the one hand and the digitalization on the other hand, and those trends generate different figures, and electricity demand is going to be going up and surpassing global energy demand. And this means one essential thing: we're now working on on a market that expands in the long term. Europe, for example, we're now staying away or walking away from a sluggish era, and we're now witnessing better trends strengthened by tensions on energy prices. A point remains fundamental. The electrification potential in Europe is still very important. A significant portion of energy usages could still be turned into electricity, and technologies are now mature and can guide this transition. We're now seeing the emergence of a market that grows upward in North America, and we were talking about in the first portion of 2025, the dynamic is more positive and driven mostly by data centers and sustained by strong investment cycles, and figures are quite significant. Electricity demand should actually be multiplied by 2 in the next years in data centers, and announced industrial investments are also going to be reaching very high levels. And for Rexel, this represents a major opportunity because those dynamics are harnessing segments in which we're quite well positioned. Now, this driving environment is also an opportunity, but the difference actually can be seen in the way we execute things. And in the last 3 years, we showed our ability to transform those or turn those dynamics into actual growth for the benefit of Rexel. We made very clear choices by focusing on very, very strong areas. In North America, we positioned on industrial automated solutions through various acquisitions, connectivity, and data centers. In Europe, we're well positioned in terms of usage electrification, connectivity, and industrial automated solutions. In Asia Pacific, we're quite strong in terms of industrial automated solutions, usage electrification, and once again here in connectivity. And this positioning stems from a very fine analysis of market dynamics in each one of our geographical regions and countries, and a stringent management of our resources. Now, let's use a very specific example in terms of data centers in the United States. With accelerating demand, we developed our models to acclimate ourselves to this model through the structuring of a dedicated organization, the strengthening of our logistics capacities, and the development of very specific expertise to better guide our clients. And those adaptations or those investments generated very nice and significant results, with over 50% of growth in this segment in 2025 and an expected growth above 20% in 2026.
Our growth strategy, so external growth strategy, also contributes directly to our capacity to capture growth. Tally is a very practical example of this, as I mentioned. This acquisition allowed us to strengthen our positioning on a very strongly growing segment, which is that of connectivity solutions, in particular 5G towers, and develop our exposition in North America. This integration was especially successful, with significant contribution to the growth of our turnover in the U.S. in 25 and beginning of 26. With this momentum, we engaged for Tally the development of their operations in Canada, so as to capture new development opportunities. We rely also on the evolution of our product offering to capture growth. Product and service offering. Our customers not only look for products, but full solutions. In this context, we strengthened our value proposition through the development of integrated offers, which, for instance, allow us to assist customers in the designing of their installations or help them optimize their performances. This evolution transforms deeply the relationship with our customers and represents a strong differentiating lever. We highlighted two essential elements, the structural market dynamics and our capacity to capture growth. To allow this dynamic to be long-term, we need a clear roadmap, which is shared by the whole group. And this is the challenge of the strategic plan that we launched last year and that we are in the middle of. This is a plan that we called Accelerate 2028, and which is within the continuity of the Power Up 2025 plan previously, and opens a new creation cycle for Rexel. And the ambition is to accelerate the priorities, which makes up the foundation of our strategy for the years to come. These priorities cover all of our model and structure our actions. Profitable growth is a fundamental element of our strategy. To reach it, we rely on internal and external levers. Concerning internal levers, data is one of the central pillars. We have today a volume and quality of data which allows us to significantly improve our sales performance. This goes by, in practical terms, an increased capacity to anticipate the needs of our customers and personalize our recommendations. Another key pillar, our own brands, which is both a differentiating factor and a vector for growth of margins. We continue the development with a targeted deployment in some geographies and segments which have high value. The objective is simple, capitalizing on our strengths to generate new growth relays. An important lever of our development also concerns external growth. In the last few years, we structured an acquisition strategy which is well disciplined, as I said, which makes Rexel a reference model in our industry, which relies on a complementary triptych: consolidation on our core market of electric distribution, in particular in fragmented geographies, expansion in adjacent segments that have strong value, and differentiation so as to strengthen our expertise and our value proposition through services. We deploy our growth strategy in a selective fashion with demanding investment criteria. This discipline is essential and allows us to grow in a targeted way while preserving quality and coherence of our model. Operational efficacy now. This is a major element of our strategy and conditions our ability to maintain sustainable growth. We have already conducted significant progress in this respect and are still identifying good potential. We pursue the modernization of our operations through different levers. First of all, logistics, with automation and digitalization of our network, with deployments that are underway in Belgium, Sweden, and the USA. Next, artificial intelligence, which we tackle as an operational tool which meets specific needs for our customers. AI allows us to improve, in particular, access to information and making customer pathways more smooth. And for our teams, it contributes to automating low value-added tasks and mobilizing more expertise in exchanges. Let's take a concrete example of the application of AI. By facilitating the treatment of requests, preparation of quotations, or in putting of orders, we free up time for our 12,000 inside sales with productivity gains of between 10 to 15% depending on activities, which allows them to focus on more value-added tasks which are closer to needs in a market that is strongly growing, for your reminder. In this very competitive market, which is quickly evolving, the ability to differentiate relies first and foremost on the quality of experience that we offer our customers. We engage deep-seated work to enrich this experience by developing services that are capable of meeting needs that are more and more specific and complex. alongside which we have strongly invested in our digital platforms, developing more performing solutions that are better integrated and better connected to the systems of our customers. The combination of services and digital makes up a differentiating lever, which is key and strengthens the loyalty of our customers and positions us as a long-term partner. No strategy can be successful without the men and women that carry it forward. We have therefore placed our teams at the heart of this model with the ambition of strengthening our capacity of execution. Our priorities are clear: developing our competencies, strengthening engagement, making security an absolute priority, and pursuing our efforts in terms of diversity. All of these initiatives allow us to build an organization that is more engaged, more competent, and fully aligned with our ambitions. Sustainability is a key element in our strategy as well. We act in practical terms to reduce our footprint and make our offer more sustainable, in particular through electrification of our fleet and the deployment of tools such as the carbon tracker. We mobilize as well our ecosystem with our suppliers through the program Sustainability Shapers and our customers through events such as Rexel Expo in France, which brought together over 30,000 participants in October of 25. Finally, we carry forward these subjects in-house and externally, for instance, with the training of all of our group executives to sustainability and the participation via CODIS to the working group on electrification in France. This structured approach allows us to accelerate the energy transition in practical terms while creating value. All of these elements allows us to tackle this new development phase with confidence. We aim an annual growth of sales between 5 and 8% midterm in EBITDA, EBITDA, margin, adjusted above 7%, a conversion of mid-term free cash flow above 65%. So these are ambitious objectives, well controlled, and translates our ability to transform dynamic, favorable market dynamics into sustainable performance. Thank you for your attention. I'm now going to give the floor to Agnès Turenne, who is going to tell you about governance at Rexel and remuneration of its executives. Thank you very much, Guillaume. As the chairperson, I'm very happy to present the board of directors and its activities. Your board is at the level of best practices of the market and the code of AFNIDEF and is made up of 11 members, 70 independent members, 44% women, 4 directors who are of other nationalities, and 2 directors representing employees. Administrators, here are in the first row, and the directors, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them and thank them for their contribution to our work and their value added, and I can tell you that this is a very engaged, contributive board where debates are always constructive and very diverse. And as you see with the table that draws up the skills that are the most structuring per board, the different directors have the skills and competencies and experience that are central to value creation at Rexel, from finance to digital, going by different sectors for services, energy, and distribution. Diversity of skills allows for rich debates and contributions to the board with the right skills. And so again, the directors are engaged, assiduous and contributive. And as you see here on this table, where you see that the board got together 11 times in 2025, which bears witness to the commitment of its members to assist the strategic orientations of this group with an average presence rate of 96%. Just like every year. One of our meetings took place abroad during the visit of several days. On site, we went to Vienna to meet with Austrian, German, Swiss, and Slovenian teams. This year, we will be going to Vancouver to meet with North American teams. These meetings allowed for covering of all important topics for Rexel, in particular strategy of the group, of course, accounts and results, operations for M&A, risk and conformity, AI, digital and cybersecurity, governance, and finally, CSR and sustainability, of course. Each session of the board was preceded by a preparatory exchange the day before to allow directors to share their prior analyses and prepare the work of the board efficiently. The evaluation of the board led by Barbara Delibar for 2025 confirms once again the very good functioning of the board and continuity of progress made in the last few years. It highlights the continuous engagement of directors, the quality of their preparation, and the quality of the dialogue within the board, just like with the whole executive team. For your reminder, next year in 26, the evaluation of the board of directors will be rendered by an external provider. Now, concerning the conclusions of the board of directors, these committees are independent and give recommendations to the directors before decision making. The presence rate of members of the committees was at 100%, and I'd like to thank especially the chairs and members of the committee for their essential and remarkable work. In 2025, the committees in particular announced the following subjects. The Committee for Nominations, Governance and CSR, led by Barbara Delibar, works on the succession plans of succession of the board of directors and was informed of the succession plans for the 4 main executives of the group, the top 150. The committee also looked into the strategy in terms of CSR and was informed of the state of advancement of the work concerning the CSRD. The Committee for Remuneration, led by Brigitte, focused especially on several structuring priorities, in particular the preparation of new free shares allocation and market practices in terms of remuneration in the framework of the renewing of the mandate of the Director General Guillaume Tessier. The committee worked on the updating of the remuneration to make sure it's consistent with the strategy of the group. Finally, the work on the audit committee and the risk committee had to do with internal audits, following action plans and validation of the risk mapping and internal audit. And we also examined deeply the cyber risk in the context of growing digitalization and structuring of a dedicated governance. The committee has also examined the annual and semestrial financial statements of the group, and also sales and performances quarterly, and work and results linked to the implementation of CSRD. I'd like now to come back to the examination by the Board of Directors of renewed mandate, taking into account the provisions of Article 14, Paragraph 2 of Statutes of the Company, which provides for the renewal. Staggered renewal of Board of Directors by a quarter each year. The Board suggests that we ratify the temporary nomination of a new director, and so I'd like you to ratify the co-optation of Robert Schusna and renewing by anticipation his mandate for a duration of 4 years as a quality of non-independent director. Robert Schusna is associated at Dividend Capital Partners Limited and was co-opted by the Board of Directors on the 14th of October 2025. Replacement of Marcus Alexanderson, previously representing Dividend Capital Partners, who, for your reminder, holds about 22% of the capital. His expertise bears on advice on investment, in particular in European listed companies, as indicated on page 26 of your brochure, and is also the member of the supervising board of Bilfinger SC in Germany. And I'm going to let you listen to Robert, who's going to tell you about his experience and track record.
Good morning and hello. Maybe a few words on myself. So my name is Robert Schuchner. I'm a Swiss-German citizen. I'm based in Zurich. My background is in banking and finance and investments. I've studied at the University of Zurich banking and finance, then joined Dividend for the last 15 years. I've been a partner at this firm, been responsible for investments of, for instance, ABB, which is one of the suppliers of Rexel, as well as I'm nominated to join the board of AkzoNobel, which is a Dutch paints and coatings company. My experience from industrial services comes from Bilfinger, a German industrial service company, and I'm really looking forward to work together with the board on advancing the company of Rexel further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. And so we also suggest that we renew the mandate of Director of Barbara Dalibard, who was nominated for the first time in December 21 for a length of 4 years. Barbara, could you stand up? Everybody knows you, of course, but just for everybody to see that you're there. The Board of Directors considered that her independence and expertise, in particular in the fields of digital and CSR, her concrete work in the governance of the company is an essential asset for the governance and strategy of the group in the next few years. And we also suggest the renewal for 4 additional years of the director of François Hook was nominated for the first time in May 2019. François, you have a fan club here. The quality of your implication in your functions as an independent director, vice president, and president of the Committee for Audits and Risks has a deep knowledge of the company and its governing bodies. His international expertise, his financial expertise, make François Hook an essential asset for Rexel as well and for our work at the board of directors. To conclude, I'd really like to say again the quality of the governance of your group carried forward by a board of directors that's both constructive and on the lookout, assisting a very performing and engaged management team as bears witness the results recorded in 25, and taking this opportunity to thank all the members of the board for these results that were obtained up until now. Let's move on now to a topic that you're all expecting, a reviewing of remuneration of executives. It's always a little bit lengthy. We're going to try to be as short as possible. One of the essential missions of the board of directors on recommendation of the board, the committee of remuneration is of course to determine the remuneration policy applicable to corporate officers at Rexel. The board sets the remuneration policy applicable to the presidency of the board, directors, director general, for the following fiscal year in the framework of the ex-ante remuneration policy. In other words, to come. Determination of remuneration paid or attributed to the previous fiscal year to the president of the board of directors, directors and general director, including reaching of performance indicators in the ex-post remuneration. I'm not going to give you the main elements of this remuneration policy. It is detailed in the universal registration document, and remunerations that stem from there are subjected to your ex-ante, ex-post, and ex-ante approval. And so you are going to be asked to approve them later. Resolutions 5 to 10 are concerned, in addition to which Rexel renews its plan for free shares attribution, and so you are going to be asked to approve Resolution 19. I think it's first important to recall that the remuneration policy as you approved last year is not going to be modified for the whole duration of the mandates underway, in other words, 4 years. It is based on the strong principles that the board of directors holds dear to heart. In other words, attracting, motivating, retaining high-quality managers who recognize and experience for your group to be as high-performing as possible, aligning to the recommendations of the FF-MEDEF code and best practices on the market. As I said, ensuring stability of remuneration during the mandates, and of course, aligning with the ambitions of the Rexel Group carried forward by the Accelerate 2028 strategy, being focused on performances short and long term, and integrating criteria that are economic, social, and environmental at the service of the group, and especially engage on topics of CSR. Now, concerning the presidency of the board of directors, in other words, myself, remuneration 25, the say on pay ex post is not changed for an amount of 400,000 euros. This remuneration remains unchanged for 2026. The say on pay ex ante resolution 8 is also of the same amount. Now, concerning the policy of remuneration of the board of directors, it is also non-changed since the 22nd of May, 2014. This is resolution number 9. For your reminder, this remuneration is made up of a fixed part and variable part, linked to attendance to sessions of the board and committee. The overall annual envelope is not changed since 2014 and consumed the amount of 74,800 euros, which represents about 70% and less actually, of this envelope. Let's continue with Guillaume Texier, Director General, and his remuneration for 25. It is the Sayante ex post. So Resolution 7. All these pieces of information are again detailed in the Universal Registration document and the convocation brochure that you received. For memory, the remuneration of Guillaume Texier is not changed again for the whole duration of the mandate. In other words, 4 years from the 29th of April 25 to the 29th of April 29. So for memory, the year 25 was divided into two distinct periods. The first period from the 1st of January to the 28th of April 25 and made up of a fixed remuneration of 800,000 euros and targeted variable remuneration representing 120% of fixed annual remuneration. Second period from 29th of April to 31st of December 25, including fixed annual remuneration of 830,000 euros and variable targeted remuneration representing 130% of annual fixed remuneration. Taking these two periods into account for 25, so we have a fixed annual remuneration of 820,227 euros to Guillaume Texier. So with your approval, of course, and so Guillaume Texier will have variable annual remuneration of 1,112,281 euros. 97,940 performance shares were attributed, estimated at 1,859,881 euros. So taking into consideration IFRS 2 of adjusted value of 18.99 euros at the date of attribution, and the different perks and pension funds stay stable. Now let's look at the financial and individual objectives and whether they were reached. Now concerning the modality of determining of variable remuneration of Guillaume Texier for 25, the detail of performance indicators for each one of these objectives is presented in the Universal Registration document. Again, to summarize, the 25 results, as you saw previously, reflect a very sturdy year that generated value in a political and economic context internationally that was very complex. The financial criteria represent 70% of variable remuneration and were reached at 116.1%. Individual criteria representing 30% of variable remuneration annually were reached at 85.6%. As a consequence, the Board of Directors determines the overall attaining of variable remuneration criteria at 107% of the target. In other words, an amount for the Director General of 1,112,281 euros. This amount is completely deserved considering the excellent work of Guillaume Texier and his teams, and remains subjected to your approval, of course, for 2025. Now, let's move on to the remuneration policy of Guillaume Texier for 2026. In other words, the say on pay ex ante, in other words, Resolution 10. Again, and as I've said several times, non-changed compared to what you already approved in 25. It is made up of the following elements. To repeat, a fixed remuneration of 830,000 euros, unchanged again. Variable, targeted remuneration annually fixed at 130% of fixed remuneration with the performance conditions that are demanding and broken down between financial and individual objectives, respectively 70 and 30%, and individual objectives as each year were set according to strategic priorities and operational strategies of Rexel. In other words, profitability, transformation, growth, and strategy, talents, and sustainable development, each representing 25%. Pension, funds and perks is unchanged. Variable long-term remuneration 26-29 to recognize long-term performance as described in the following slide. Severance or departure compensation unchanged, and you are therefore to approve the resolutions 5 to 10 for ex post and ex ante remuneration of corporate officers of the Rexel group, considering that all details are in the Universal Registration document. Finally, just like every 2 years, we suggest you approve the resolution number 19 concerning free shares that were eventually, in the end, a very efficient tool to recruit the best talents, retain them, and motivate them, of course. Free shares have been attributed to 1,000 to 1,500 key employees in Rexel. 2 distinct plans. Performance plan for senior managers and a presence plan for intermediate levels. These plans can only represent up to 20% of the envelope and cannot bear on more than 900 shares per beneficiary. An acquisition period of shares over 3 years without conservation period, not conversation, conservation for all beneficiaries. Now let's move on to the performance criteria of the plan. The criteria have been decided upon by the board of directors according to the strategy and long-term objectives of the company. The performance criteria and their weight are the annual average of growth rates and of EBITDA for 40%, the average ratio of the free cash flow before interest and taxes on EBITDA AL for 20%, a relative performance of the Rexel share compared to SBF index 120, so 20%, conducting of the ESG index made up of 4 criteria, so in terms of the corporate social responsibility, representing 20%. The performance levels linked to financial and extra-financial criteria are appreciated after the period of 3 years, as well as the level of performance relating to the Rexel share. The details of objectives and performance levels are detailed in paragraphs 3 to 15. Titled Recamp Table of Remuneration Policy for Fiscal Year 2026, say on pay ex ante in the Universal Registration Document 25. I will therefore suggest that you approve this resolution. Thank you for your attention, and I'm now going to give the floor to the statutory officers who are going to present their report.
Merci. Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. Ladies and gentlemen, the shareholders, hello. I'd like to talk on behalf of the auditors, commissioners, KPMG and PwC, which I represent. I'd like to talk about our mission in 2025, and would like to make a presentation of our reports, which were established for your benefit and for the purpose of the ordinary and extraordinary general meeting. Let us recap the terms of our reports as we usually do. The objective of our mission, let me just remind you, is to provide you with the reasonable assurance that the consolidated accounts and annual accounts of your company taken as a whole do not contain any significant anomalies, and that the accounting methods are appropriate, and that the assessments of risks, significant risks made by management are reasonable, and that the texts and enforced laws are complied with. We would like to remind you that the consolidated accounts were prepared on the basis of the IFRS accounting referential, and the annual accounts were done on the basis of the French accounting rules. Our approach is adapted to the organization and the activities of the group, and we'd like to place a great premium on current and extraordinary activities such as acquisitions, divestments, restructurings, and financial operations we're taking into account. Our conclusions were presented in a report sent to the Audit Committee and the Risk Committee, as well as the Board of Directors on the 10th, 11th of February 2026, respectively. Now, we'd like to inform you of the auditee points which were identified on the basis of various factors. First of all, the relative weight in the accounts, the complexity of their evaluations, the importance of judgment carried out by management. Insofar as the consolidated accounts, so this is the evaluation of the recoverable values of goodwill and supplier discount evaluations. Insofar as annual accounts, this is the evaluation of participation of shares or interest sharing procedures. We also carried out specific verifications pursuant to law. We can verify that the Board of Directors management report and checked out the annual accounts and consolidated accounts presentations on the basis of ESEF. In conclusions of our work, we certify the annual accounts without any reserves. On the basis of the first and second resolutions, as an information, we'd like to make an observation on the accounting method change related to the first application of the ANC 2022-06 rule. Related to the presentation of the account, we'd like to certify the consolidated accounts without any reservations in relation to the second resolution. And so far as our report on regulated conventions, we observed that none were authorized throughout the year. Let's now go on to sustainability. In 2025, your company published its or included in its management report information regarding sustainability for the second year, pursuant to the provisions of the directive. Our report was made on a limited assurance regarding the compliance of the elements. Three natures here: the compliance of the process, the double materiality process, as well as the compliance of information regarding ESRS sustainability. Number three, the compliance to taxonomy-related regulations. And so far as the work we did not identify any mistakes, omissions, or inconsistencies of great importance. Finally, to conclude on a very special report on the resolution subject to your extraordinary general meeting. I'd like to make it simple here. Those resolutions, the resolutions proposed in this extraordinary part are between 16 and 20 resolutions. We've got 4 reports reminded in this slide and the next slide. Those reports are related to the reduction of capital, to the cancellation of bought shares, the emission of ordinary shares, and the emission of free shares. The described modalities in the report of the Board of Directors related to the mentioned operations do not require any remarks or observations from our part, unless later exams are made in the contrary direction. We would then actually produce an additional report which will include, or would include, the exam of the emission price determination conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. I would like to kick it over to those who would like to be vocal, and for that purpose, all you got to do is raise your hand, and the hostess will actually give you a microphone. Yes. Yes, sir. Hello. Good morning, ma'am. Of course, as always, you made forecasts, which makes a lot of sense for next year. But given the fact that things are now happening today in the world, how were you able to make those very specific forecasts? I'm talking about the situation, for example, so far as future supply and the increased oil prices. Guillaume Texier will answer the question, and I would like to then talk about the work done by the board. Yes, of course, now those forecasts represent a range, so you got some uncertainty in those forecasts, including the fact that the international context is subject to changes, and we maintain those forecasts. As you may have observed, we're now leaving the call and the results of the first quarter, and we maintain those forecasts as we defined them. When having a look at the recent evolution of the international crisis and what is happening in the Middle East, what kind of impacts can we talk about in so far as Rexel? The different types of impacts. Our product prices might increase. Our products, when manufacturing the products and the products we sell, well, for example, our suppliers include energy, power, PVC, aluminum, and the prices are impacted by international geopolitical tensions. And this is probably going to give way to further price increases, which would then actually have a positive impact on our revenues, but we would like to have to transfer those price increases into our customers. That's the first point. Another point, which also represents an impact from this Middle Eastern crisis, a negative impact in our costs. For example, the operational costs, 10% of those costs are related to power. In other words, the transportation costs, the fuel component, or the heating part of our buildings, and the heating related prices. And of course, we'll have to do two things. We'll have to work to really try to cut out expenses insofar as energy sources, and to some extent also transfer some of those price increases or cost increases into our customers because transportation will be affected. The third effect, which we can actually identify in this international crisis, a more sluggish economic or macroeconomic situation. If economic uncertainty remains and inflation is important, for example, people might actually be slow in the decision-making process, and this could have an impact on our market with a negative impact. But on the other hand, something which we can already identify in Europe, for example, people are more attentive to the electrification process, because one of the ways for non-oil producing countries is to defend themselves against price increases is to transfer usages and focus on electrification. For example, nuclear electricity or renewable electricity could be used, local productions and less variable and less impacted by geopolitical situations. And we can see the premises here. For example, the electrification plan presented by the French government goes in that direction, but we also witnessed in Belgium, for example, in March, a very strong interest based on photovoltaic panels, and the same thing happened in Australia for the same reasons. So there are positive and negative impacts, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really make that many changes, because we don't really know how they're going to be offsetting one another, but they're really going to head into different directions. And that's how we actually define our forecasts and update those forecasts throughout the year. But as far as the Middle Eastern crisis is concerned, it's difficult to say whether this is a positive or a negative factor, because all those different effects are going into different directions. I hope my answer was as clear as possible, just to answer your question. Thank you, Guillaume. And your question? Yes, go ahead. Thank you very much. And your question actually is an exact reflection of the work carried out by the board. Of course, the directors are asking those questions, and there is a 3-year plan. This is the accelerated plan, and every year in the budget, and each time the board convenes, we're really scratching our heads over the various challenges and impacts, and that's the reason why this work is highly constructive and a permanent dialogue with Guillaume Texier and management. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Well, listen, in that case, I see no... Oh, I'm sorry. Sir? Sir, ma'am, I'm sorry, I cannot see you very well. Sir, yes, I had a question with regards to American tariffs, and the Supreme Court condemned these tariffs imposed by President Trump. Are you able, or would you like to wish for a reimbursement from the American government? The answer is very simple. We did not pay those tariffs directly. We were affected by tariffs because our suppliers, in some cases, had to pay those tariffs for components included in the production of their products. But on our side, we did not pay any tariffs, and most of the products we sell in North America are produced in the United States or Canada, generally speaking, and so this is irrelevant as far as we're concerned. It could be relevant among our suppliers or our suppliers, but on our side, we're not going to scratch our head over this issue. Thank you. Do you have any further questions? I see no further questions. I'm going to now kick it over to Madame Officier so that we can carry out the voting of the resolutions. Thanks for your attention. Hello, everybody. My name is Isabelle Hupfner-Leger, General Secretary and Secretary of the Board of Directors, Rexel's Board of Directors, and we're now going to vote for the resolutions. Let me just tell you that the final quorum is 84.9%. That's 247,387.48 shares represented here or voting by proxy. You can see the various modalities as to carry out the vote of those resolutions. I hope that they are clear, and we're now going to vote for resolution number 1. First resolution regarding the approval of the social accounts with a benefit of 367,697,922.45 euros. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And And the resolution is adopted. Resolution number 2, regarding the approval of consolidated accounts generating a profit of 591.4 million euros. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And the resolution is adopted. Let's carry on with resolution number 3 with the allocation of revenues generated in 2025 and the distribution of a dividend of 1.20 euros per share. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And the resolution is adopted. Resolution number 4 regarding the approval of regulated agreements pursuant to Article L225-38 of the Commercial Code. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And the resolution is adopted. Resolution number 5. Now, this is the approval of the information mentioned in the 3.2.2 of the 2025 Universal Registration Document, compensation of corporate officers for the year 2025, ex post. The vote is open. The vote is closed. Resolution number 6. The approval of fixed, variable, and extraordinary components related to total compensation and all the various advantages paid out in 2025 to Agnès Touraine, head of the Board of Directors, ex post. The vote is open. The vote is closed, and the resolution is adopted. Resolution number 7, the approval of fixed, variable, and extraordinary items pertaining to total compensation and the various advantages paid out to or attributed in the fiscal year 2025 CGM 68 General Manager. This is the ex post vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. The resolution is adopted. Resolution number 8. This is the compensation policy applicable to the head of the Board of Directors for fiscal year 2026. This is the ex ante vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. And the resolution is adopted. Resolution number 9, related to the remuneration policy for directors, fiscal year 2026, same thing, ex ante. The vote is open.
The vote is closed. The resolution is adopted. 10th resolution, relating to the remuneration policy applicable to the Director General for the fiscal year 2026, ex ante vote also. Voting is open. Voting closed. The resolution is adopted. Moving on to the 11th resolution, relating to the ratification of co-opting of Robert Schuschna as a director. The voting is open. Voting closed. The resolution is adopted. In the same line of thought, moving on to the 12th resolution relating to the renewal of the mandate as a director of Robert Schuschna for the next 4 years. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted. 13th resolution relating to renewal of the director's mandate of Barbara Dalibar for a duration of 4 years. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted. 14th resolution relating to the renewal of the director's mandate of François Auque for a duration of 4 years. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted. 15th resolution, the objective of which is the authorization given to the board of directors to operate on the shares of the company. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted. 16th resolution, the objective of which is to allow the board of directors to reduce equity with the canceling of shares. Opening of the vote. The voting is closed. The resolution is adopted. 17th resolution, allowing the board of directors to issue with canceling of the preferential right to subscribe to the benefit to members with a savings plan. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted. 18th resolution, allowing the board of directors to conduct issuing with the canceling of preferential subscription right reserved to certain categories of beneficiaries to allow the conducting of employee shareholder operations. Voting is open. Voting closed. Resolution adopted. Moving on to the 19th resolution, allowing the board of directors to attribute free shares to members of salaried employees and to corporate officers of the company and its subsidiaries. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted. 20th resolution, allowing the Board of Directors to attribute free shares to members of salaried employees and to corporate officers of the company and subsidiaries, which sign into a employee shareholder plan with Rexel Group. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution adopted. We are now going to move on to the last resolution, 21st resolution, giving powers for legal formalities. Voting is open. Voting closed. The resolution is adopted. Thank you, Isabel. Now, the agenda, all the items on the agenda have been covered. Thank you for your votes and your attention. And so thanks to all shareholders. I'm now going to consider the session closed and wishing you a very good rest of your day.